Welcome, Produce Like a Pro people. My name's Colin Liebich.
I am Barry Pointer.
Let's tell you a little bit about who we are. First of all, I own Plastic Dog Recording. We're here now. We're going to test some amps, some guitars. We're going to do some recording with maybe some acoustic guitars, some bass. We'll get to all that. But my background as an engineer producer is that I'm connected to companies like BAE, Mojave Audio, Amphion, Ocean Wave, Mixwave, and a bunch of others. And I've been recording as an engineer and a producer. And I want to introduce you to my friend Barry Pointer. We're really lucky that I could get him to come down and join us today and talk about recording electrical guitars.
You know, like you, I produce and record and mix music. Been fortunate to have some good relationships that they continue to grow. And
who are some of your amazing clients?
My longest one would be John Five, now with Motley Crue, great solo artist. Started working with him several years ago on his solo material. And then through John, I've been able to expand through others like Nikki Sixx, did the LA Rats tune a few years ago, cool. That little supergroup thing they did.
Did you do something with Ozzy?
I did. So Billy Morrison, I was fortunate enough to be able to mix a great record for Billy Morrison and friends. So there's a lot of his material and a lot of special guests. And, work with Peter Criss, got something cool coming out with him soon. Spent some time with Manson.
As in Marilyn Manson?
As in Marilyn Manson.
That's amazing. What was that like?
The guy is so smart. He's brilliant. Yeah. You can just watch him just thinking and working out what's coming up next. And he knows what he wants and knows, how to get it. He's got some great stuff coming out too soon.
Cool.
Gilby Clarke, Gilby, if you don't know, was with a little band called Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s. Gilby's worked with Faster Pussycat. He works with Stephen Perkins. He's got his own band thing that he does.
I was lucky enough to track Stephen Perkins. Very fun.
Great drummer.
Amazing.
It's fun to watch him play, just to be in the same room.
Yeah. Well, he's got great energy.
Yeah. So, Billy Sheehan, we're not talking about guitars, we're talking about bass players. And, Billy is...
I wish he still lived in LA. He moved to Nashville. I don't get to see him as often.
He's one of those guys that you could just say, here's the track.
Yeah, he makes it amazing.
And just do you. Jared James Nichols is another guy, another blues guy, just phenomenal guitar player, plays with his fingers.
Well, you sound qualified to record electric guitars.
Yeah, at the core of it all, guitars. Man, I'm a guitar player myself, and recording guitars, it's the most fun for me. I like to keep it simple. We have some great stuff.
We have some good gear. We're the gear schmucks. There's a Marshall stack. There's some amazing Bad Cat amps we're going to talk about. They just really have a phenomenal sound. There's a vintage Hiwatt. There's Fenders. There's Orange. There's a vintage Supro. Whole bunch of different things. We're going to throw different mic combinations up and let you guys hear those tracks and tell us what you think. Okay, Barry, so this is a setup I've used a bunch of times where I take a common U87. I'm not a big 121 guy. I love the 121 for other applications, but here's my thinking. Everybody on the planet uses a 57 and a 121, and it is a great sound. It's a very well-known sound. What happened for me was I tried a bunch of different mics, and this was the setup I came up with. And then I called a friend of mine down in Nashville, Vance Powell, and I asked him what he did. It was really interesting. He said he did it with a U67 and a 57. So guess what? We're going to try that next. But right now, let's get this mic'd up. Let's bring it up in the console, and let's listen to it. I'm going to have you play guitar.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Awesome. Sounds great.
Okay, so what I've done is I've created two guitar tracks, one for the U87, one for the SM57. So I have Barry, he's sitting in the other room, in the live room. He's about to play a track for us. So I'm going to punch record and we're going to get him going. Now what I'd love to do is just add a little reverb so we can hear how this is going to sound and I'm going to use some incredible reverbs, Bricastis. I'm lucky enough to have 3 of them. So if you give me a second, I'll go ahead and put some sends right here on the session, and we'll listen to what it sounds like with just a hair of reverb. Go ahead. We're using a Bad Cat amp. We're using what's called a Jet Black. I love the sound of this amp. For a traditional amp, I don't know. For modern amps, I don't think it gets any better than the Bad Cat Jet Black. But now we have a couple of files, so we can go ahead and listen to them and see what we captured. So at first, I'm going to listen to them both together. Then what we'll do is we'll solo each one and see what we have. That's a really nice, rich recording. Let's hear just the 87. It has some mids in it that you're not going to hear from the 57. Let's hear the 57 and see how they sound against each other. And then once again combined. Now keep in mind, I don't have any EQ settings. Now that's a very basic sound. It was very easy to do and it was quick. 2 mics, 87, a 57, no EQ, no plugins. But let's talk about the signal path. So what I've done is we go through the wall, we come into 2 BAE 1084s. I could use the EQs, but again, I haven't. They're disengaged. And then it goes from there into the mixer of my Rupert Neve Designs 5088 desk. And that's it. So we don't have a plugin on the session. We don't have a compressor. Really nothing. It's just the raw data. As far as the mics are concerned, then the reverb really complements it. Now let's go ahead and try a U67, a vintage one, in the same position as the U87 and see what that sounds like. Let's go ahead and audition each track separately and see what the U67 now sounds like. Let's try the U87, see how it sounds against the U67. You can hear there are definitely some subtle differences. Let's hear the 57. The U67 and the 57 together. I can definitely hear there's more of a modern sound to the 87. I do really like the 67 with the 57. I think it's a pretty amazing sound. Now, of course, if I was recording this in a real session, I would use some EQ. It's kind of important. I'd round out the mids a little bit. I might give it a little more high on the 67. Not sure, but that's a whole other step. What we're doing today is just listening to raw sounds. So now let's go ahead and set up another mic setup. So now, Barry, what I'd like to do is kind of get your take, because you've heard it both. Mm-hmm. You've heard the 67. You probably just heard I was auditioning the 87 against the 67. Mm-hmm. The 57s, of course, are the same. It hasn't moved. What was your takeaway from that?
They both sound great. Not knowing which one you were auditioning back there, I'm doing a blind test, and there's one that is just a little warmer.
Now I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to use the Mojave MA37,
okay,
which is kind of a spin-off of the C37 that Sony made. But this is David Royer's take on what that mic could have been if it was a little bit more dynamic. It's not a clone. It's David Royer's version of it, I like to say.
Yep.
My partner Dusty in the company, he likes to say it has somewhat of a ribbon mic sound. So let's listen to that. I'm not sure what we're going to pair it with yet. Okay. Maybe you have some ideas.
Okay, let's see. Let's see what it sounds like.
Okay, let's do that.
We'll start with that, and then we'll see where maybe we can accentuate that in a good way.
Okay, cool. So what I've decided to do is try a different dynamic mic than the 57. It's a Mojave MAD. Now, the curve on the MAD is slightly different. Keep in mind that SM57 was made at a time when PA systems, back in the 70s were kind of crappy, and it was curved for a really different time. We finally got David Royer to decide to design one because he couldn't stand dynamic mics and didn't want any part of it, but we got him to do it. And I want you to hear this mic too, because it's a very different take on a dynamic mic. And it's right in the same price range too. So we're going to use that, and we're going to use the Mojave MA37. So it's going to be a Mojave mic setup now. We're going to see how these sound. Now I'm going to put them in the same pattern. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do pretty much the same thing and see what we get from it. And the MA37 is a very different sounding mic. As I said, it has more of a very close to a ribbon mic in a way.
Okay.
Go ahead. Great. Now let's listen to those. Just the 37. You can hear the 37 is darker, but with the brightness of that, they make good companions. How'd that sound in your cans?
It sounds great. It's
that's kind of
vintage.
That's kind of my favorite one at the moment.
Me too. It's got a nice roundness. What's coming from the MAD, it doesn't have a harshness that a 57 has.
No, it has a darkness that the 57 complements because the 57 has a brightness that's missing from the MA37.
Yeah.
I really do like them together, and this is the first time I've put them together. Tim Pierce, actually, was one of the people who showed me how he used the mic, and I believe it's pretty close to what he did.
Yeah.
But now I get why he's so fond of the mic. And Tim Pierce was very fond of the original C37, and we have a video about that that's online for Mojave.
But I agree that of the three arrangements that we've had for this riff, this sound, this vibe, this would be my choice.
Yeah, man, it was really rich.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprised because that 67's rich too, but boy, this really sounded nice.
Should we try a different guitar?
Yeah.
You want to keep the Les Pauls, keep the vibe?
I don't know. You know, there was that guy in Pink Floyd who loved Hiwatts. Gilmore thought they were awesome, and he played a Strat through them.
Let's do it.
So let's do that and try some other mics.
I like
what
it.
do you think?
It's fun. Sounds great.
Okay, awesome. Let's use a couple of different mics. Now we're using the Hiwatt. Now we got a sound we liked. It's a custom Hiwatt. It's a 50-watt amp. Kind of a, I'm not going to go into the history of this amp, but let's just say it was left in the back of an amp shop, and it was a second-generation Hiwatt that was never put together brand new in the box. So my guys came across 6 of these, and they were put together. I chose to go with a cabinet with 2 12s. I really like this sound. Plus, makes it easier to mic it. Let's face it. When you're, a single speaker, I got to have both mics on the single. So we got 2 mics to choose. You were thinking the AEA KU5, huh?
I like it. For a ribbon mic, you get that fullness on the low end without it being too light, but it's still got a nice, clean top end.
Okay, well, let's see. I've never used it that way. I'm a big fan of that mic. Let's give it a shot. And I'm proposing we pair it with the MAD, the Mojave mic, because we really like the crispness of that dynamic.
I think it's great.
Okay, let's set it up. What I usually do is put pieces of tape. Let's look at it again. Great. I'm going to hit record and tell you when.
Okay.
Rolling. Cool. This is really interesting. Sounds completely different. Now we have a different guitar.
Right.
We have a different mic setup.
Yep.
Maybe we should go back to a Les Paul and hear that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to audition a couple of the tracks in here and listen to them against each other.
Okay.
Here's the KU5, just on the Strat. Now the Les Paul. Fascinating. And MAD on the Strat. Now the Les Paul. Interesting sounds, no doubt, but let's go ahead and try to find a couple of more mics that might make more sense on the Hiwatt. Playing with it, I think the amp too has a different dynamic.
Totally different.
We got really used to listening to the Bad Cat and how sweet and tasty the Bad Cat was. This is definitely a more vintage sounding amp. I say we move on.
Yeah.
And maybe plug in that big ass Marshall and make some real noise. So this is a 1978 BC Rich Mockingbird made out of koa wood, complete with preamps, all the nasty crap a heavy metal guitar had in the late 70s and early 80s. These are rare. I don't see a lot of them on the market anymore. When I was a kid, I always wanted one. But when a Les Paul was $400 in one of the guitar shops in Boston, this guitar was $1,200. They were unobtainable when I was a child. And so I always wanted one, and I made sure I found one when I became an adult. And I'm plugging it in to a hand-wired Marshall 100-watt JMP. This was the last of the era of the JMPs that Jim Marshall made himself. Just before he passed away, he reissued this amp in all its glory with all the same materials that the original was made with. And again, it's a rare combination. It's another rare amp. I love this JMP. The only problem is it's really wickedly loud. Incredibly loud. We can play it with a mellow guitar, but this thing has so much bite and it's so crazy. I thought we should give it a whirl. I don't know. I think that's about right for mic placement. Maybe a little lower. Let's see what that sounds like. Let me get it all powered up and plugged in. Normally I'd use something called an attenuator, where I plug into the Marshall, plug the guitar into the attenuator. Then I can run the amp at full volume and attenuate the sound and make it make more sense. Might pull the mic back a bit more. I'll come in. It's really unconventional. It's kind of fun. Let's hear what it sounds like. Go! That's a M49 that's about, what, 7-8 feet away from the amp?
Yes.
The Marshall is hardly turned up, and it's mind-blowingly loud in there.
Right.
I have had it turned up all the way in there. It's insanity.
I can't believe it. So now it's...
Well, you can't use that much.
Yeah.
You need to use something you can drop at least 10 dB, if not more. But it's not, it's I think it's a very vintage sounding guitar track.
It's a distant sounding track.
Yeah, there's a lot of room in it. It's not up close. And when you listen to the other amps and you listen, especially that Bad Cat, that modern amp, doing the conventional things, or let's just say using more conventional mics, it definitely has a sound. The last thing I'd like to do is the old 121 with the 57.
Okay.
And that's set up just to give everybody an idea of what it's going to sound like. I got some 121s. I got more 57s than I know what to do with. They're like IEC cables.
They just
accumulate.
They accumulate.
People leave them with you. It's like, take your friggin' cables with you.
One lasts forever, but you have 10.
I know, but we're lucky. I mean, we have an embarrassment of riches here. We're using just the signal flow path alone, going into a beautiful 1084. That's actually, it has a BAE black faceplate on it, but it's one of the vintage 1084s that came out of John Entwistle's desk back in the day. Brent Averill racked it up. There are only 2 of them that I have that are like that, and then it's pouring through this gorgeous desk. I didn't put anything on it except a little reverb so that you just got a better sense when you're playing. I do like to do that and hear what it sounds like, but it's definitely been experimental. Let's do this last test with the 2 mics everybody knows. I don't know. You want to do it on the Marshall, or maybe it's all set up. It's a loud amp, though. Or let's go. Maybe
we have options. Let's go.
How about that high gain Bad Cat? Let's listen to that. I'm not into high gain amps, but I'm into that one.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, truth be told, it's a 122. And the reason why I use a 122 is because it's not going to be hurt if I put phantom power into it. I have a console. Most channels are phantom power on the console, so I don't want to run the risk of having an assistant plug in a 121 and blow the mic up, and I have to go get it re-ribboned. So we are using a 122, and as far as the sound goes, I think the sound is amazing on a 122. Not far off the 121, just a little more dynamic for me, and that's just my listening to it. I could be wrong. But let's see what it sounds like when we do it on this high output amp. And then the last thing we're going to do, I know I keep saying the last thing, but the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do a really nice clean sound through the Jet Black, the Bad Cat. I could do a video just on Bad Cats. When I discovered these amps, I was blown away by them. I don't officially endorse them. I'm just an owner of them, and that's the way I like it. So let's hear what this is going to sound like.
It all sounds good.
Go for it. Well, there's that Royer 57 sound. It is luscious. I can't say that it's bad.
That was actually in the middle. Do you want to try one on the bridge now?
Let's do another take on the bridge.
Okay.
Hold on. Go.
It's a good vintage, distorted, overdriven, fuzz-like sound out of the amp going straight into it.
Yeah, I think that sounds modern.
Yeah.
Because if I put an attenuator on that Marshall, turn the Marshall jacket all the way up, attenuate it down, and then really focus on the recording of it, it's incredible tone. And that's that vintage sound. This, to me, that amp, I think Bad Cat's done an amazing job making a modern high gain amp that doesn't sound like crap. It's just better.
Like the Vines, a band like the Vines, or that type of thing comes to mind.
But when I first heard these, I said to my buddy, they just sound better. And that's it.
Yeah.
Now, I love my Fenders. I love my Marshall, the Supro, all the other amps that are sitting around. But I could literally make records with these two amps.
Just the two amps. Yeah. And like the other one, the Jet Black.
Or the Jet Black, if I just use that with a fuzz pedal, I could make plenty of records.
Yeah, exactly. That's
But we're going to go back to the Jet Black, and we're going to do some clean stuff.
Okay.
Some real pretty, clean stuff.
Okay, let's do it.
And a lot of times when I'm recording, I push a little treble just so I make sure I have enough to work with when I'm mixing it later. So I'm not shy with treble, I'm not shy with bass. Okay, what are we gonna do? Well, I'm gonna record it conventionally the way I'd normally record a guitar. I'm probably gonna use a 49 on it, and I'm gonna go ahead and maybe I think I'm gonna use the MAD, the Mojave mic, and get a real warm, rich sound. That 49 is gonna give me that. It's just gonna deliver. And the MAD is gonna give me that sheen on top that I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and set that up. That 49 is a big mic, so it has a big diaphragm, and I just pretty much get it right over the center of that speaker and make enough room for the MAD to come under it. Go ahead. Conclusions. That last thing you did, I love that track. Like you and your buddy came up with that. Crazy.
Yeah, my buddy Todd Morse.
I was kind of blown away. I'm listening to it in here. It's a 49 and a MAD.
It sounds great. It captures the percussiveness of the lick.
Yeah, listen to that shit. Now, it is a Bricasti reverb, but it's an ambient sound called Ice House. So it has a little slapback built into it, and I'm just in love with this reverb. I usually use it on vocals, but now that I've discovered it on guitars, especially clean guitar,
it fits this.
It does. It fits it. Yeah. Now, all that percussiveness, that low end, comes from that 49, and then that dynamic delivers to the high end.
And it's clean low end. You know, it's not muddy at all, and there's nothing on it.
No, there's not a plug-in on the session. There's just a send for the reverb, and that's it. And it goes out, goes through the reverb, and into the console, and that gives us our whole sound. And it's so simple. And that's one of the takeaways for me, is yeah, we went through distorted guitars, we went through different things. I wish I could be here all day doing all the different combinations. We used just a few mics. I think my takeaway was that MA37 sounded amazing. The 49 sounds amazing.
It does.
I think the KU5 would be great on a different amp.
On a different amp and supporting something that's got a little more top end.
Yeah, sure. AEA makes good mics, no doubt. But we've just had a chance. I mean, what was some of your takeaways?
Well, I think, going back to, when we started, that 87, 57. It sounds so good. They both complement each other. They're doing something the other one's not. And when you blend them, it works.
Well, yeah, contrast. It's nice to have some contrast.
The 67 definitely gave it a little bit more of a vintage tone.
Yep.
Those were just simple combinations. The MAD, is that what it is, right?
Yeah, it's an MAD by Mojave.
Yeah. That thing, I would replace my 57.
Because of the curve, and because we talked about earlier, it's a different curve. It's not the old 57 curve that went with old PAs from back in the 70s. Yeah. This is a curve that's much more smooth. We kind of call it the smooth alternative to a 57.
Well, I can see it being great too. Again, I do a lot of high gain rock stuff that's always pushing mids. The amps are compressed, and then depending on what the pickup situation is, that mic could eliminate.
Well, the detail on the top end, the crispiness of it gives you a lot to work with on the EQ. And keep in mind, again, folks, no EQs. We did this just raw as raw can be. And that's the way you want to do it in the beginning, to listen to the mics, listen to the different sounds. And I do like EQing in.
Yeah.
I go in with an EQ.
You do?
I touch it up. I make sure it sounds perfect. Like on this last one, I would have pulled a little bit of the top end down, smooth it out a little bit. But all in all, I mean, we could do this all day and night and come up with different combinations. We should have tried some of the other mics on the clean. I'm sure people are going to ask for that. But, I can only keep the crew from producing like a pro for so long. It's a great crew. The guys are awesome. Warren's awesome. And I can't say more about the channel. I love participating and bringing my knowledge to you guys and bringing my friends in and their knowledge, because there is no wrong way to do things. It's just good and bad.
Right. It's good and bad. I think my whole thing has always been, if the end product sounds great and it's what you wanted, who cares how you got there?
I remember this engineer, this age-old tape cutting engineer, guy who made 1 million records on tape, who I really love, great guy, Bill Smith, said to me early on when I heard him over my shoulder at a get-together at one of the schools. He said, "You don't need an EQ, just move your mics around."
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I said, "Whoa, tell me more about that. Can I come to your studio and see this practice?" He said, "No, I'll come to yours." And next thing I know, he's helping me mic a drum kit. And this is a guy who made Yes records. Mm-hmm. And we're micing a drum kit, and he's showing me proximity and what you can do with microphones to EQ them just in movement. And that's the kind of stuff no one teaches, and I wish they did. People like Bill Smith and all the others in this industry did it their whole life. They just have so much to share.
Well, don't you think, too, with technology today and the things that you can do with a computer, a lot of people have gotten lazy.
Yeah.
Right? And not worried so much about getting it right going in, leaving all the work to do later.
And that's another discussion when we talk about summing boxes, analog gear, how it can help you as a tool. I you know, I didn't come up working in a studio with other people and getting all this knowledge, you know, over a lifetime. I started 15 years ago in my spare bedroom. So in a lot of ways, I'm like everybody out there. I started with 187, one Neve summing bus, two BAE 1084s, the black ones that are in the desk, and a couple of other key pieces of gear. Oh, a Veramue by Manley, great piece of gear. And these were essential pieces of gear that helped me establish a very cool sound. And so the analog side of it's important, the digital side. Look, I know people who make great digital music. I'm not saying, you know, that it's not good stuff. It is.
Yeah.
But the combination to me is music to my ears. When I take those samples and the digital, I run it through this big thing behind me. It's amazing what it sounds like. Hope this is informative. If you have questions, don't hesitate to put them to us. Love to answer them. Thank you.